This conference will now be recorded.
The Willmar City Council is meeting in emergency session to address an issue of outdoor dining ordinance. And at this time, I will call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Maskey.
Here.
Swantis.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Alvarado.
Here.
Asmus.
Here.
Plowman. Nelson.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
With the tragedies that are happening within the state of Minnesota, I would like us to just take a moment of silence and remember the unrest that's happening and ask for peace within our communities across the state of Minnesota and across our country. So let's pause for a moment of silence, please. With that, we'll go to the agenda item. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Rick Fagerly, the chair of the Community Development Committee. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community Development met on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:15 with the go-to meeting procedure. Our agenda item was commercial use of public property emergency ordinance. And a little history is current municipal code allows for commercial business to utilize public sidewalk space in front of their building with certain criteria is met. There are no fees to apply for this permit, and businesses must provide proof of insurance. In response to Governor Walz's executive order providing guidelines on the first phase of restaurant, city attorney and city staff have drafted an emergency ordinance to allow for the commercial use of public property as follows. Public property must be directly abutting the brick and mortar location of the business. Bright visible barricades to mark the commercial use of public property. Proof of insurance must be provided. City added as additional insured. Businesses selling alcohol must complete an additional agreement with the city and allowance for administrative approval of temporary street closure requests. There was a long discussion and there was a motion made and seconded to adopt the emergency ordinance to allow for temporary commercial use of public property and assign it a number and publish it. And I will introduce this ordinance.
Second.
Is there any questions by any council members? Councilperson Nelson?
Thank you. I received an email this morning and it was a positive one from the standpoint of going ahead with it, but seeking clarification that the walkway that will be preserved will be closest to the building. And I tried to look in the document and I think it addresses handicap and that kind of thing. So I'm assuming that there will be a standard that the walkway that'll be kept open will be right next to the building and tables will be away from the building. So just asking that question.
That would have to be addressed by Administrator Gramitz or Dr. Ramstead. So either one can apply or comment.
Yeah, I guess I would take a stab at it. I don't think that the city has any particular requirement as long as there's ADA requirements are being met. I personally don't have any issues with it, being up against a building or near the edge, on the outside edge of the sidewalk, if that's where they want to place their tables. But if they also want to have the parking space, they can go out into that area. The only concern about having tables closer to the curb would be some vehicles have longer fronts to their vehicles and the bumpers stick over the curb further than others. But if in fact they go into the parking area adjacent to their restaurant, I don't see that as a problem one way or the other. Unless, Sarah, if you have any other questions, or David, or responses to the question.
I can
Go
answer to
ahead.
that a little bit more
Go
too. Yeah. So right now the most common that we see is, like, if you think about foxhole or spurs, generally the tables are put out closest to the curb, and that 5-foot width is kept closest to the building. Either way, it would satisfy, like Brian said, it would satisfy the ADA requirements as long as there's a 5-foot pathway for people to navigate through. My vision of this would probably be that the tables would continue to be closest to the curb, especially if they want to spill out over into the parking spaces in front of them. If a business is selling liquor, the state law requires that area to be compact and contiguous. And so with that, it would make the most sense for all of the tables to kind of be able to be roped together, meaning that they would be by the curb if they're going to use those parking spaces again too.
All right. Something went wrong with my screen here, so I can't see everyone. So if you have a question, just state your name. I see Sean. So.
All right, I just have a quick question on, safety was paramount to allowing us to do something like this, and as long as these businesses are adhering to social distancing and the cleaning processes and things like this, I have no problem with, frankly, all businesses should be opening if they're doing this, but this is a step and I like it. Questions on if they do not comply. I know there's this $300 penalty, which to me seems, it's strange because of course they're all in economic crisis, and that's why we're talking about this. Is there another way to just simply exclude somebody from having these additional privileges instead of the penalty for financial? But I don't know if there's any legal recourse in that. I'm just curious about violating and what are our options there.
Who wants to answer that?
City council members, we had a staff discussion about that particular issue, and what we basically came down on was better to include it and not levy the fine than to not include it and not have any leverage, per se. So that's how we made the decision to include it. But if the city council feels it's too strong of a penalty, you can just take their permission to operate away from them, and they're done with it. The problem comes in is if they say, tough luck, I'm not moving my tables and chairs now. Now what are you going to do to me? So are we actually going to send out our police department and public works to move all their stuff? So we were hoping that having that penalty in there would eliminate the need. It's there, but most people are probably not going to be forced with having it placed on them. But it's there if we ever need to because of some, business that just doesn't want to do it correctly.
All right. Any other questions? I have one for Judy or administrator. If this passes, how are they supposed to register since no one's working at City Hall, and what's the procedure then?
We talked about placing this on our website. We can get it out to the Chamber of Commerce, alerting people to where they can access the information and submit it. And both Judy and myself have said as they come in, even if it's over the weekend, we'll check our our emails and approve, periodically through the day so that they can be ready for Monday.
That would be great. We know not everyone is gonna be open, but for the ones that want to, I want them available so they can be open early Monday morning. So, any other questions? I can't see Julie or Audrey. Kathy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering how many businesses have contacted us so far and expressed an interest in it.
That's Sarah or Judy or Brian?
I have not been contacted specifically by any businesses, but I've heard through staff and through the chamber that there are some businesses that are interested, and that even in the non-downtown business district, the restaurants that are further out are still interested in how this will impact them. And for a restaurant that has their own private parking lot that they can expand into, because it is contiguous to their building, they still need the authorization from the city to expand their liquor license into that area. And so they would still need to fill out the one form, the license agreement, as far as alcohol sales are concerned. But because they're not on public property or right of way, that part does not apply to them. So there are some questions out there, and we also received a guidance for cities to expand outdoor services, and that has a lot of good information that we can also give out to the restaurants that are interested. And we can actually post this on our website too, because it does help answer many of the questions that one might have if they're in that business. And some of it's pretty, simple questions, but it is a resource that we can provide to the restaurants too. One thing I did want to point out before it skips my mind, and that is when we talk about, I think, the sidewalk, that's clearly city decision. We talk about the parking space adjacent to a business, that is clearly a city function to open or close as need be. The one location that I've had conversation with, I believe the Public Works Safety, the Community Development, and that was a restaurant called Frida's. And that happens to be located on Benson, and it is adjacent to Highway 12. And in talking with the city engineer earlier today, he has been in contact with the Department of Transportation. And while it's my understanding that location had been closed down for a graduation celebration a year or 2 or 3 years ago, that was very short-lived, and no permit from MnDOT was obtained. We know this is going to be longer than 2 or 3 hours, and therefore the city engineer is working on contacting the appropriate people to obtain a permit to close that intersection down. That might delay things for that particular restaurant, but that's the way it has to go. The only positive thing on that particular issue is that the city does own the little triangular space that's grassy between the restaurant and Highway 12. It's adequate size to where one could, put some additional tables and seating. And so that would at least get us a short-term solution that we would allow them to use that space. And as soon as the MnDOT permit comes through, then we could work at at getting them more space out in front of their restaurant. So that's the only glitch that I've seen so far that would slow anybody down.
Any other questions? Sean?
I don't have a question, and it may be just an obvious comment, but I mean, we looked at safety precautions here, and so if this passes, I would implore residents of Willmar to start attending and patronizing these places once again, and going going to these restaurants. They need you more than ever, and we are trying to make this work for our community, and so hopefully this is well received and people will kind of return back to our favorite places across the city. So please come back.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the emergency order to allow restaurants to reestablish themselves with outdoor dining and also with the appropriate liquor licensing following the rules and regulations as set forth by this meeting. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
So the resolution does pass enacting this emergency ordinance, and staff will be preparing the documents. I have asked Councilmember Fagerly to sign on behalf of the mayor as the mayor pro tem, so the council is all aware of that. And that is to expedite the implementation of this ordinance. And I want to thank the council members for being in attendance along with their staff. And I will echo what Councilmember Meske said. Please get out and support and patronize your local eating establishments. We need them more than ever. And I've had a number of contacts within the last 24 hours. I think I've been contacted by 4 different businesses within the last 24 hours asking if we were going to do this. So I'm very, very pleased that the council took this action, and this is a step forward. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
No, we aren't done yet, Mr. Mayor. We need a motion to print this by summary. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to publish by summary. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes as well. Councilmember Fagerly, is there anything else?
No, I just want to thank everyone for showing up and voting for this because it's needed. So thank you.
Councilmember Schwantes.
I just think it's really appropriate to say thank you to the staff who put a lot of work and effort into this in a very quick, short period of time. And I believe Sarah had some forward thinking and was already preparing it before this even came to be as through the executive orders. So I just outstanding job and thank you very much.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I'm pleased that we are doing this. I did get a message from the Convention and Visitors Bureau that they have sent a guidance for reopening document to all the restaurants. And I just think it's great we're doing this. There's a lot of community support out there. And so if any restaurants have any questions, I think we clearly said today too that there's a lot of available resources out there to help them get going. So looking forward to patronizing them. Thank you.
Additional comments. Now I can only see 5 of you, so if you wish to speak, I can see Fagerly, Schwantes, Davis, Alvarado, and Nelson. I can't see anybody else. Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to echo what has already been said. I know there's some downtown businesses in Wards Street that are very excited about having this opportunity, and I'm sure they're going to fly with it. So thank you to everybody that made this happen.
Any additional comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Fagerly, seconded by Meske. We are adjourned.